Hello, friends. Welcome back to Heartscapes, where we are learning the system of Reiki to be rooted, to be spacious, to be connected, and to remember ourselves. My name is Michaela. Welcome back to the studio, and welcome back to the midst of our 21-day Reiki practice journey with Sanmitsu, the mystic practices of body, breath, and mind. We've been spending the last week and the coming 2 weeks working with this foundational principle within the Japanese roots that are the foundation of the system of Reiki, upon which the system that we have adopted here in the West was built. It's a foundational principle. It's a worldview. It's a spiritual mindset that is essential to have some level of understanding with when we're going to engage practices like Reiki that come from these cultural origins. And so we've been spending some time with them working through practices of the body. And this week we're working through practices of the breath, the voice, and the energy. We've talked in previous videos about the way in which working with Sanmitsu helps us to integrate these three essential aspects of ourself, these three ways in which we experience life and the world, and through which we journey on our pathway to remembering our true self, to feeling our sense of wholeness, our sense of groundedness and spaciousness, or in other words, enlightenment. I've talked in other conversations about the ways in which the system of Reiki is a simple, accessible, and elegant practice. That it takes something that can be so overwhelming, a concept like enlightenment, right? The highest spiritual achievement that one could achieve, and puts it into the context of daily life. What does it mean to walk through our day-to-day life with all of the challenges and joys and mundanities and incredible experiences that daily life offers us, to walk through those things with the mindset of an enlightened being, and that we can achieve that moment by moment, day by day, in small experiences, in large moments. It doesn't have to be a profound mountaintop experience to have moments of an enlightened state of mind. And understanding and working with the principles of Sanmitsu is a really powerful way to help us shift ourselves into that kind of mindset. And it's all about integration, integrating these important, essential aspects of ourself. And it's about understanding ourselves, the ways that we best learn and understand and integrate our experiences of the world, and understanding the ways in which the body, the mind, and the voice can help us in different ways. Some of those things are going to come more easily to some of us than others. And so having an honest self-awareness of what can help us to ease into these practices is really valuable. So we are working this week with practices that lead with the voice or the breath, and with an understanding that energy flows with the voice, with the breath. And so those three things are combined together in the kumitsu, the mystic practices of the voice. And so we're going to work today with a practice that is essential specifically to the system of Reiki. Some of the practices that we're doing in this series come from other traditions that are related to Reiki. We've worked with some Tai Chi, with some martial arts practice, with things that come through esoteric Buddhism. And we always are coming back to practices that are within the 5 elements of the system of Reiki. And so today we're going to work with the essential voice practice of the system of Reiki, which is the precepts. Truly, the precepts are the focal point of the entire system of Reiki. These 5 guidelines, these 5 pieces of insight that describe the outcomes that we can expect if we practice the system of Reiki, and also give us some guidance on how it is that we get there. When our founding teacher, Mikao Usui, began teaching this practice, truly the focus was on the precepts. It was about meditating on the precepts, embodying the precepts in our life. The other elements of the system were brought in to help support that practice through the body, through the voice, through other practices of the mind, to just give us a more robust way in which to embody the precepts in our life. But truly, the purpose of the system of Reiki is to embody these precepts. We work with them in a variety of ways. Primarily, though, practices that lead with the mind, contemplating these precepts, and practices that lead with the voice, chanting these precepts. And so we're going to take a look at the precepts themselves, just do a little bit of context setting for that. And then we're going to do some chanting practice with them in the original Japanese. So let's get into that. So we're going to look first at what the precepts are, and then we'll talk about how we work with them as a chant. So we're looking here at a rendering of the precepts in Japanese kanji. This is by an artist named Michiko Imai. She is over on the East Coast of the United States from Japan, a really amazing calligrapher. I'll put her contact info down below. And she created this rendering of the precepts. I just wanted to start there because really what we get to do as those of us who are Westerners, I'm from the United States, Central California, and so I'm working with these elements with the precepts in language and in cultural contexts that are not my context of origin. And so the written language of the kanji is, for me, something that I have a little bit of distance from because I cannot read this in its original Japanese. I can recognize certain symbols because I've been working with it for a long time. But if you were to set down some Japanese kanji and said, can you read this? I cannot. And so I get to relate to this as a representation of the energy of something that is essential to the practice that I'm inside of. And in our classes, in our year-long Reiki training program, we do spend a good amount of time working with various types of kanji that are represented in the system of Reiki, including the precepts, and allow the shapes of this pictorial language to help inform our experience of the concepts that are represented therein. And there's both a challenge and a benefit to working with this when this is not a language that we readily can read, because we can relate to it as an energetic form, as almost a visual artifact of the energy of these words without being distracted by reading the words. On the other hand, not knowing the original language gives us a challenge because there's so much subtlety and depth to the Japanese language. There are so many different ways in which kanji can be interpreted, and particularly in relationship to each other, that I am in a process of continuing to learn, and that brings us to greater and greater depths of understanding as we work with them. So I just wanted to begin there, looking at the precepts as an energetic artifact. From there, I wanted us to look at the precepts written out in letters that we can read. We can, those of us who are English speaking, can wrap our minds and our mouths around the words written here on the left in Japanese, and some translation on the right, keeping in mind that there are various ways in which this can be translated. So we see there on the top another rendering of the precepts in Japanese. And then we see the Japanese words on the left and the English translation on the right. And there's a lot of layers of meaning inside of all of that. Today, as we work with practices of the voice, we're going to be focusing on the part that is most often chanted, which again is the part in bold. And that part is translated in a variety of ways, but very often, for today only, or just for today, I anger not, I worry not, I'm grateful, I'm true to my way and my being, and I show compassion to myself and to others. And so inside of that, we see, again, this promise of the outcomes that we can expect if we practice the system of Reiki, and we see some guidelines on how to get there. When we practice the system, we can expect to be less attached to our anger and our fear. We might experience those emotions, allow them to inform us about what is important to pay attention to, but we're not attached to them. They're not defining who we are, and we can let them go once they have come through and shown us what they need to show. We can expect to be rooted in gratitude, in gratefulness, in the ability to see what is in front of us, what is true in this moment, and be grateful for it, even in the midst of difficulty. And to reap all of the benefits, the physiological, emotional, psychological benefits of experiencing gratitude. And finally, we can expect to feel a deeper sense of self-compassion, really loving ourselves for who and what we are, including all of our flaws and challenges and mistakes, showing compassion to ourselves in all of the ways that we show up in the world, and then extending that compassion to others, not just others who are in our immediate life or those who we like or care for, but everybody, people we don't know, people we struggle with, people possibly even who have hurt us. To be able to extend compassion to others from that deep well of self-compassion is truly, it could be considered the greatest indication that we have really achieved a state of embodying Reiki or a state of enlightenment. This set of precepts also invites us to be diligent in these practices, to perform these practices in the morning and in the evening, to chant, to improve our heart, mind, and our body through these practices. And to do so is to engage in the spiritual medicine of 1,000 illnesses. So that is a very brief overview of the precepts. I've gone into the precepts in much more detail in other videos. I'll try to remember to link those below. And of course, it's something we spend a great deal of time on in our classes. Again, the precepts truly are the foundation to the system of Reiki. The whole rest of the system is oriented around helping us to embody those precepts in our daily life. And one of the ways that we can embody those precepts is to literally bring them through our body, through the voice, through the sensation of the voice in our body, through the esoteric quality of voice as it goes from our body out into the world, to really feel the sensation of those words in our body through the practice of chanting. We've talked in the beginning of this series about the way that we shift in our practice, not necessarily in a linear way, but again, in response to what we most need to support our practice on a given day, but that we have this tangible form of the body, right? And so practices of the body can be a little bit easier to help us focus our mind, to call our attention back from distraction and to focus on our practice when we incorporate gesture, movement, postures where we're really paying attention to our body. It's a very tangible way to practice. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the mind, intangible, ephemeral, esoteric. You can't touch the mind. You can't see the mind. It's harder to understand. And when we're in practices that lead with the mind, it can be easy for the distracted nature of our mind to take over and to pull us out of those practices. And so, again, honest self-assessment. Could I use a little bit of support from a physical practice, or do I have enough focus of mind to just stay in more of a contemplation practice? One thing that can be incredibly helpful is to bridge these two with practices of the voice. So it has a certain amount of tangibility, but it's also a certain amount of ephemeral and intangible. So it can be a really effective way to bridge our practice and to help us to stay focused. So we're going to work with the part of the precepts that says, just for today, I anger not, I worry not, I'm grateful, I'm true to my way and my being, and I'm compassionate to myself and others. We'll work with that in the original Japanese, feeling the energy, the vibration of that original language, those original words. Whether or not we understand what those words mean, we can keep in mind that there are many layers of depth to the meaning of those words and the ways in which they relate to each other inside of the precepts. There's so much to learn there. There are opportunities to learn those things if you wish to take it deeper, but you don't need to know any of that to work with the feeling of those words, the vibration of them in your body. And that's what we're going to go into in this practice session. So just a word about how we practice chanting inside of the system of Reiki. Chanting exists in many different traditions, and there are many different structures for chanting, many different ways of chanting. The way that we're going to be working with it in this practice, it's an extension of the Joshin Kokyu breath practice. We have worked with that practice a number of times, over and over again. It is the foundational practice. Essentially, it has us orient our body in an upright, easeful way, relax the belly, focus our attention on the inhale, follow the inhale with our mind down into our belly, allowing our belly to expand with the breath, making more space inside, and drawing our attention inward into the first diamond of the hara, the low belly. We talked about this quite a bit in last week's sessions working with the body, but this location of the first diamond, the first energy center that we focus on, connected to earth, connected to the body, our rooted, grounded place, and the home of our spark of life, our connection to the web of life. In Joshin Kokyu, once we've settled into focusing in our low belly, we envision that spark of light, either visualizing it in our mind, feeling it in our body, or just having any other sense of it, however works for our system. And when we have a sense of connecting with that spark, or the idea of there being a spark of life in our belly, we imagine that spark growing and filling our body, surrounding us, moving outward from our center, creating more space within us, around us, and connecting us to the life around. That is, in a nutshell, the essential practice of Joshin Kokyu. And as we work with chanting or with mantra, we are essentially working with an extension of that practice. So we're doing all of those initial steps. We're following the breath down into our low belly, into our hara, connecting with that spark of light. And as we exhale, imagining that spark growing brighter, filling us, surrounding us, moving outward in a sphere into the spaces around us. And as we do, we are releasing the chant, we're releasing the mantra through our voice. So that exhale becomes the intonation of the chant of the mantra. And we're keeping in mind that visualization of the spark growing brighter. And so we intone that chant through the fullness of the exhale. We might not get through the whole chant in a given exhale. That is totally fine. What we want to avoid doing is taking quick, fast breaths in order to keep up with the pace of a mantra. So we want to adjust the speed at which we are chanting a given mantra so that we can ideally get through the whole thing in a single breath, or we can take a pause to take that next breath so that we can avoid breathing in really quickly and not getting that nice full inhale. So that's generally the method, the how of how we're going to work with mantra, with chanting in these sessions. So let me bring up those words for us. So we have here just these 5 central points of the precepts. Kyo dake wa ii karuna, shinpai suna, kansha site, gyo o hageme, hito ni shinsetsu ni. So moving down each column, top to bottom, on the left and then on the right. If this is your first time pronouncing Japanese words, don't feel too overwhelmed. You can take your time with it. You can slow down. You can just speak these words out loud as many times as you need before going into chanting. You can pause this video, do that as much as you need. But just a general guideline for pronouncing Japanese, each letter is pronounced, so you don't have contracted letters. For the most part, each letter is pronounced. So in that first one, kyo da ke wa is how that is pronounced. And you can chant along with me, or you can just listen. Again, taking your time to wrap your mind and your mouth around these words as much as you need. And my invitation to you is to work with them for some time, long enough to make it feel comfortable in your mouth to recite them, because we do need to have a certain amount of ease in our recitation in order to really settle into the recitation. If we're struggling with pronunciation, then our mind is not focused on the practice itself, but on the pronunciation. So just give yourself as much time as you need to get used to these words, and then come back to the chanting when you feel ready. So I'm going to go into these I'm going to start with a relatively slow pace, just reciting each one in turn. And then I'll pick up the pace a little bit, and we'll pick up a bit of a rhythm, a little bit of a cadence with reciting them in a little bit of a faster pace. And so just pick it up as you like. And in your own practice, of course, go whatever speed works for you. So settling your body into a position for practice, allowing yourself to feel well supported by the structures below. Taking a couple of breaths to relax your belly, to relax your shoulders. Perhaps rolling them back a couple of times to open your chest, to make plenty of room for your breath to move in and down into your low belly. If you're finding today that your breath is having a hard time moving into the belly, if you're shallow breathing, the breath is wanting to stay up in your chest, then for today, your practice is to gently work on inviting your breath low into your belly. Don't worry about chanting. If you ever find that you're shallow breathing and it's difficult to ease your body into breathing into your belly, then that is your practice for that day. Don't worry about anything else. If you struggle with that, please reach out. There's strategies that can help you with it. But for now, assuming that your belly is soft and your breath is moving in and down, your belly is expanding with the breath, you're resting your attention on your inhale, drawing your focus down into your low belly. Just take a couple of breaths to arrive here. And with your mind following the breath in and down and resting in your low belly, I invite you to begin to sense or imagine a spark of light resting here in your belly. The spark of life that connects you to all of the universe, to all of life. Your divine light shining brightly, clear, and luminous at all times, the center of your body, the center of your energy sphere. Always available to you when you bring your attention here. And as you inhale, imagine this spark growing brighter, expanding in all directions. And as you exhale, sense or imagine this spark continuing to expand, to fill you or surround you. Just taking a couple of breaths in this pattern. And as we begin to chant in a moment, sense or imagine the vibration, the sound of this mantra releasing from your center, and just like this light, expanding from you in all directions, filling you and surrounding you with the physical vibration of the sound of these words and the energy they represent, the intentions they represent, filling you and surrounding you with each breath. 今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、世を励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、世を励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、世を励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、世を励め、人に親切に。Let's rest here for a breath or two. I'm going to pick up the pace and make that a little bit more rhythmic. 今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。Two more. 今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。今日だけは怒るな、心配すな、感謝して、行励め、人に親切に。Coming to stillness, to silence. Just resting here, continuing to feel the vibration of this chant, of these words in your body, as if they are still emanating from your center outward in all directions as you breathe. And then bringing your hands together at gasso, at your heart. And a gesture of completion and of gratitude for these practices that have come down to us, that continue to teach us, to live within us as we invite them in, to show us a pathway out of suffering and into joy, the joy that is our inherent birthright. When you're ready, coming back into this space. All right, friends, welcome back. I hope that was a good practice for you. I hope the context that we set earlier on was helpful in understanding the importance of working in this way. Tomorrow, we will again work with the precepts, and you'll be invited to notice how the rest of your day unfolds when you take some time to practice in this way. What impact does it have on how you feel, on your mindset, on how you relate to folks, on how your body feels even? These are the kinds of things that are important to notice as we practice, because the differences can be subtle or they can be great. But if we're not paying attention, we're going to miss them. So friends, wherever it is that you are walking away from this place and this practice, I hope you are deeply provisioned for it. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, I love you. Goodbye.